everybody. Welcome to this episode of Canine's Talking Sense. I'm your host, Cameron Ford. As usual, I wanted to sit down on this episode and interview somebody who has a wide variety of years of experience, 30 plus years in law enforcement and working with dogs, and part of a national canine association. So with that said, Melinda Ruopp, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast, and let's dive into your background, but thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I'm more than honored to be here. I didn't ever think I'd be sitting on the other side of the screen from the one and only Cameron Ford.
Oh, no. Yeah, you've been on the list for a while. And then I finally, as I went through my guests this year, I was like, I'm going to get time with you. And that's why you got that message the other day. And then here we are.
Awesome. So, well, thank you so much. It's really honored.
Absolutely.
I'm honored.
So to give our listeners and viewers a little bit of a background on you, walk us through your experience. How did you get into law enforcement? And then how you got into the canine position?
Oh, it's kind of all an accident, but it happened. So I started out as a dispatcher at our department here in our county. We have a fairly small county, probably 29,000, 30,000. So it's not a big metropolis or anything like that. Started out as a dispatcher and worked for a few years as a dispatcher, and wasn't quite enough for me. So I really felt like I could give more, I could be more involved. I never really got the end of the story when you're sitting in there in the dispatch center. You never really get the end of the story. So I stuck my little toe in and decided to be a reserve officer for a little bit, and really felt like this was my calling. I felt like I needed law enforcement, and maybe law enforcement needed me a little bit. In our community, we didn't have any female officers, and I felt like that would give me an opening to do something that was really meaningful within our own community. So I jumped in. I was all in. My husband and I committed the mortal sin of a cop and a dispatcher getting together. Neither one of us were linked up or married or any of that drama. We were both single. Yeah. And he and I have been married 30 some years now too. So, but throughout all that, maintained my goal of wanting to be a law enforcement officer. And once I was accepted as an officer, the whole department accepted me wholeheartedly in. And I'm not going to lie, I had this little goal somewhat in the back of my head because my husband was a canine handler back in the 80s. And so I kind of had that little goal that, gosh, it would be so awesome to do two things that I love, which is dogs and law enforcement. So it worked. Everything kind of fell together. I worked the streets for a while. I kind of learned the things you got to learn in those first few years. A lot of dramatic learning going on there. And then was lucky enough to be chosen by our department as canine handler. So
how many years,
awesome.
How many years did it take you from the point when you became sworn and you were working in the agency before you had the opportunity to become a canine handler?
It was 3 years, which is not a lot of, that would probably be one thing that I would change maybe, is to have a little bit more of the actual street time before I had to also be a canine handler. However, I felt like I was ready for it. I think I was tactically sound. I was making good decisions. I'm not tooting my own horn or anything like that, but I felt like I was ready for it when the opportunity did come up for me to get a dog.
And what was your first dog's training, or what was its skills? Was it dual purpose, single purpose? What did you have?
Yeah, he was a dual purpose German Shepherd mutt, probably more than anything else. I went through, and this is really where my heart is, because I think I got probably the best training and foundation. I know everybody probably says that, but I went through the Timothy Jones Canine Training Center up in St. Paul. I'm a 2-time graduate of that, and I'm very proud of having been through their school with 2 dual-purpose dogs. So I went through the first course in 1998 with a German Shepherd. Back then, They were picked. They were just like plucked out of people's backyards, honestly. They were junkyard dogs, some of them. There wasn't the DNA like you see, the good stuff that you see in today's world and today's training. My dog specifically was an escape artist, so the people were tired of paying to get him out of hock. But they would test, 10 or 12 dogs before they would even find one that somewhat fit the bill. So I was very lucky, I think, to get matched with the dog that I got from them. I think they did a good job of matching a dog with me and with my abilities, got me a dog that I could really work with and build on. And it turned out to really well.
How was it? Obviously, I mean, and we'll get into it coming ahead, how much law enforcement has changed over the years. But I mean, at that day and time, not that it was so archaic, but I know it had to have challenges as one of very few women in law enforcement and even fewer in canine. What was your experiences like from that point of view?
I got so lucky because my department accepted me wholeheartedly. I think because I had experience there as a reserve officer, but also as a dispatcher. So they knew me. Mm-hmm. They knew my heart was there. They knew that I was going to give 110%, which I did. It was an amazing experience, and it was completely supported my entire career, my 30 plus years with that department. And on the canine side of it, I'll go back for a second because I think being a female in law enforcement in general, especially back then, I got more strange looks. People like, there's a female cop. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. It wasn't near as normal as it is now. Yeah. And then add the dog to that, that it really was a unique thing. We didn't have a lot of females, especially in the state of Iowa. There were a couple of us that worked dogs, but it wasn't until, probably 10 years later when you really started to see certainly more females that were handling dual purpose dogs on the street.
So was your husband still working a dog when you became a dog handler too?
No, he wasn't. His dog had retired before I was even actually hired at the police department. Okay. So I knew the dog, but I never got to see him work, unfortunately.
How was it having a spouse that had already been a handler? How did that dynamic work between you guys, as now you're the handler, but he's already been there before, he's worked a dog? How did you guys navigate that world? You know what? If you have good marriage, you can handle almost anything like that. It was nice because I didn't have to come home and explain anything. He knew what some of the things were that you go through, and especially as a canine handler, he knew also that by the very nature of canine, you're going to be drugged right to the source. So he knew the whole picture. And fortunately, because he was a canine handler, I think that allowed a lot of integration of the dog into our house, into our home, not necessarily in the house, but just to be able to. The dog respected him. He knew how to treat that dog and how a police dog needed to be handled. So it really made it the best of both worlds for me and the dog, actually. Yeah, that's pretty rare for how things go sometimes, when both spouses have one in the same career field and two within the specialty of the same career field, can make it a challenge. But it's good to hear that people like yourselves, they know how to navigate it and make it work, and it is doable, clearly.
It is.
My question on your first dog is, what would you say was one of the biggest lessons your first dog taught you?
To ask the question, why is that dog doing that? I think that's probably, to this day, one of the most valuable tools that I use is that step back a second and understand, why is the dog doing what he does? And that dog was, he was kind of thank goodness I had that dog first and not my second dog. My second dog was the perfect, just you could not have trained an easier dog. My first dog, however, challenged me every single day. And so I had to really have a full understanding with him that he had a dominant personality. He bit me every single day in class. So we had to redo that almost every single day to establish that, I don't want to say dominance, because you have 12,
more or less.
You have 12 weeks to make that animal from someone's backyard to I'm going to get out of the car and go after somebody with him. You have 12 weeks to do that in, and that wasn't an easy task to accomplish with a dog like that, because he was willing to do it and he had the gumption to do it, but he definitely was a huge challenge, and I had lots of scars and stitches by the time I was done training him, but it ended well.
Yeah. And in that career, how many dogs did you work?
I worked JR from 98 through 2007. And then I got my second dog through St. Paul, went through the class with them again, with Canine AWOL. And he was from Slovakia. So he had that dog was a rock star. And I could not have been more pleased with the ease of which that animal learned. And, you could argue that I was an experienced handler by that point, which always helps. But I also saw so much, there was just a complete total difference in dogs with AWOL. Mm-hmm. He had some medical issues. Unfortunately, had to retire him a little earlier than I probably would have normally retired him. Mm-hmm. So by the time I retired him, it was the start of 2014, I believe, and I was hoping to have worked him closer to retirement for me, which was 2018. So when I retired in 2018, I decided I wasn't done, even though I had been supervising and training between last dog and that. Apparently decided I needed more fun in my life and decided to get a single-purpose narcotic dog, Labrador, floppy ears. And I've been working her now since I believe I got her in 2020 or 2021. Been working her, she's strictly narcotics. And then that wasn't enough. I decided to get a firearms detection dog and trained up a narcotic and the firearms dog basically for search warrants. So sure. I work for the county rather than the city. And just recently let the actual certification go. I decided I'm still doing what I love. They're still calling me. I can still go in and do search warrants. I'm not doing probable cause stuff, just the fun stuff, which is search warrants, finding stuff with both dogs, mostly the gun dog now, to be honest with you. And I'm living the dream right now for free. I'm not really getting paid much, but I love it. Yeah.
What in that second dog that came to you, obviously with some really good skills on its own, what was something that second dog taught you that you now carry forward?
Just because I had X number of years under my belt, I still was asking the same questions with my second dog. It was much easier, of course. But I think if looking back, I wanted an even better street dog. I wanted an even better trial dog. I wanted him to be completely rounded in a way that my first dog wasn't. And I don't blame him and I don't own all the responsibility for my first dog he was just like routine. He wasn't excitingly great at anything. Although he did win first place overall for the USPCA one year. But my second dog, I think, I was still asking those questions. Why does he do that? Because he was such a different dog.
Mm-hmm.
And I was finding that most of the answers to those questions were because I'm an idiot and I'm doing things that I shouldn't be doing. Honestly, and to this day, working the 2 dogs I have now, I still stand back sometimes and say, okay, now why did that dog do that? And what do I need to do as her handler to correct that problem, or how did I contribute to that problem? So it's still the same answer, I think, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Even though my second patrol dog was a much, much stronger dog. He was a beast on the street. In every sense of the word, he was a tough dog, but he was also just chill too. So
that's a nice part.
I still ask the same questions though.
Yeah.
What makes the dog do that?
This episode of Canines Talking Sense is brought to you by dogbase.co, the all-in-one platform for working dog professionals, from training logs to certifications, deployments, medical, overall performance tracking. Dogbase keeps everything organized and accessible in one place. No more notebooks or scattered spreadsheets, whether you're running detection dogs, patrol dogs, search and rescue, nose work, scent work, whatever it is, Dogbase has a package that fits your program, and it's completely customizable and it grows with you. Go check out dogbase.co today and streamline your training program. We personally use this here at Ford Canine. It is a wonderful application, great for logging everything you could ever want, especially when it comes to detection work. So those of you in nose work and scent work, go check it out. What would you say, out of either first dog or second dog, what was one of your most memorable deployments with either one of them?
Oh my gosh.
Something that sticks out in your mind that you're like, oh yeah, I won't ever forget that.
You tend to forget the bad ones, right? You tend to forget the ones that were not successful, even though those are the ones that I think I learned the most from, the non-successful ones. But my first dog he found 100 pounds of marijuana that was buried underground, basically. It was in basically just a hole in the ground in a culvert-like thing with a metal door, locked door over it. And they covered brush and debris and stuff like that over it. And we had given up. It was 10 acres. We had no idea where it was. Oh. And we literally had given up, and my dog, who I'm not going to lie, I thought he was chasing a rabbit, went up over, kind of over a little hill or a little rise, and I see dirt flying, and I'm like, come on, stop chasing rabbits. And I climb up the hill and look, and he's in full alert. Back then, everybody scratched, so he was digging and scratching, and we ended up finding 100 pounds plus, actually. Wow. Of marijuana. My second dog, he definitely had some good street finds. 20 pounds of meth once, lots of cash, lots of small finds, which I find some of those to be just as important as the big ones. We had some really good tracks to a couple suicidal guys where we located them before anything bad happened, which I'm always all about that. That's such an important part of having a canine, is saving lives too.
Yeah.
And just in general, some really good. I had a dual apprehension once. We had a burglary in progress, and I deployed the dog in. The dog found the first guy, and I could tell the dog drug him out of a closet. And the minute I saw the dog, I turned around and told my backup officer, there's a second one. Look at his ears. There's a second one. He was the canine handler as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So my dog gave me that second one. So we didn't just go blowing in there back in the day when maybe you didn't use tactics as well as you should. I tended to be very tactical if I could, to the best of my ability, but used his ears. I mean, he clearly gave it to me that there's a second guy there. That was really something that stuck with me, that I just need to really trust my dog. That was real early in his career too. So it was a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. Now, knowing that obviously, and you see I share it frequently, there's always what we do in training and how the dog performs in training, and then what actually happens in real world. What have you seen in your experience that you say, okay, though this looks really nice in training, I didn't see this exactly in reality? What are some things that you've had takeaways just from going from the training world to the operational side of things and lessons learned there?
Oh my gosh, you're speaking my language. One of the things that I guess harp on with my training group or talk about a lot within even our association and other dog handlers is our inability as, that's going to sound bad however I say this, but our inability as trainers, as handlers, to let the dog fail, to set it up to be hard enough to somewhat come close to what street work is. Because you cannot recreate street work, in my opinion. You can come close, I'm sure. You can set things up to try to add. I like to add a lot of environmental factors, stress, where I'm throwing the book at the dog, the dogs that are ready for that. And I think we miss the boat as handlers. I don't want to say us cops are lazy. I can raise my hand to that. I'm right there with you. But I think
we're very patterned.
We are way too predictable. And I learned even with my first dog, I was doing things with my first dog like variable rewards that you never heard that back then. And I never had a name for it, but I was doing that. And it was kind of an accident. The dog needed me to do that. And I learned it from him, so to speak. But we tend to set things up when we're setting up training. It's just always a win. And simple things like my training guys hate me sometimes because I set up these, you just can't win them type scenarios. Something as simple as I walked by the training group carrying literally 2 pounds of methamphetamine. They knew I had it. They saw me carrying it. I took it into the training venue and put it somewhere completely outside of the training venue and then told them, hey, we're working 2 pounds. And I took them all down into the venue where there was no odor. And after about the 8th dog of not finding it, I think they were on to me then. But like I told them, did you learn more doing that? Or would you have learned more if I'd have just put it out and your dog would have walked in and boom, found it? Where did you learn more? And I love that. I love being able to try to think of even street scenarios or street things that I did back in the old days, or things that they have happen and within my unit. Let's recreate that. And we'll go right to the place where it happened and we'll recreate it to the best that we can. Not everything has to be a win.
Yep. And that's one of the things that, obviously we've talked about a few times when I've been out in your area teaching, is frequently we like to, like you said, have this very pattern training, easy wins. We pat ourselves on the back. Oh, look, versus the challenging ones. And kind of what you described was like very similar to the Lisa Litt study, where they knew she had training aids. She said she had training aids, but never put anything out. Right. And that wrecked the industry for a while. And though, if those have listened to I think it's Police Canine Radio, they interviewed her. And like she said, her intention was not to create this thing. Her husband's actually a prosecuting attorney. And wasn't ever trying to do that.
Yeah.
It was just highlighted through the results of what occurred. And it made things, talk about, I mean, that name alone was very, very bad words in the industry for a long time, let alone you say canine research, what would come from that.
Right.
But to me, what it really highlighted, and it still to this day does, is we treat detection in a very simplistic way, very easy. Throw some hides out, check the box that we've done the training, we've done this odor, whatever it is, versus being creative like we are in the bite work side of things. You ask a lot of handlers on the patrol side of things, especially these days with social media, YouTube, and everybody sharing all these various scenarios they come up with to challenge the dogs and put the dogs through these very difficult situations, and handlers to do good decision making.
Right.
However, on the detection side of the house, we have failed to do that in the same way. And part of my mission, that as you've already seen and continue to do starting even more so next year, is really kind of shake that up a little bit, set up training to challenge you and embrace whatever failures occur, because we'd rather fail in training and identify the problem than fail in reality. And a lot of times your failure in reality may or may not even be measured, because how do you measure what you miss?
Exactly.
And we rarely get to know that answer. So the fact that, you were doing that and pushing these teams is the parts I love being able to share on a podcast like this. So other people know who are probably thinking the same thing, but maybe a little hesitant or nervous to do it. I made a post today actually talking about, it's a segment of my lecture with Orlando Police Department where I was saying to them, take your training aids, wrap them in different things and put it in a different environment. And then the first comment I got was, I mentioned that to my unit and they all laughed at me. And because that's part of that whole integrated where handlers are constantly used to the status quo and they want these easy wins. And when we challenge them, our peer pressure prohibits us from doing well or to accept failure.
Exactly.
And I say doing well by challenging us, I should say.
Yeah.
But because we don't want to fail in front of each other, our egos kind of inhibit that from occurring versus going, you know what, just like bite work, let's try this, let's try that. Let's take our training aids and be creative. How would you hide this if you're trying to get it past me, and so on and so forth. And I think we embraced more of like what you described there. We'll see teams kind of rise to the top better and have less operational issues or potential failures, or the bigger picture, not getting called out legally for not doing some of these things. Because as we both know too, the other side of this equation is the legal defense experts are highlighting some of these things that we aren't doing, or at least we're not documenting if we do it.
Absolutely.
Which is another problematic aspect. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything you want to add to that.
Yeah. I think back to one of the problems that my first dog had, and this is an example of me stepping back and saying, why is he doing that? I think I believed after going through class that dog, he's a police dog now, he's a certified police dog, he should just go to that search warrant and boom, find drugs, right? There should be no issues. Until I went to a typical search warrant with the diapers and the pizza and the dogs and the poo or whatever all is laying around, and realized that my dog was not searching for drugs at all. I mean, I thought he was. And that was the first time I think I stepped back and went, what is happening here? And what do I need to do to fix this? And that's when I realized I can't continue to throw a dog in a sterile environment and then be shocked when we go into a typical search warrant and he isn't necessarily searching for drugs.
Yep.
So I started then very early in my career doing very uncomfortable things. To this day, I do very uncomfortable things with my dogs. And by that, I mean just weird stuff that probably would never, ever happen. Merry-go-round. I made my dog alert to drugs on the merry-go-round while it was spinning. Now, why would that happen? That's never going to happen anywhere in real life. I can hear people saying it. You're right.
Yeah.
It's not. But if she does that and can handle that pressure to maintain a hold and do that while the merry-go-round is spinning, then what can't she handle, perhaps out in the real world? Knee deep in cow manure, of all things. I live on a farm. If my dog will continue to do a search, even though she's fighting through mud and muck, but she will still continue to search, maybe that would transfer then over to those nasty search warrants where you just can't even imagine, the circumstances, and it's terrible.
It's like going to a house that's had a hoarder living in it for a decade.
Exactly.
And then you're supposed to go find whatever this item might be, firearm or narcotics, hidden, and that it belongs in the environment. That's the thing too, is
absolutely
these things that we're looking for belong there. They've been there for a long period of time, where in training, what we've put out doesn't belong there. So therefore it's like a beacon for the dog to pay attention to because it doesn't belong there versus the thing that belongs there. And it's harder to go, oh, this stands out, which is why, to your point, your dog's really got to know the odor and the variations of the odor. And it's probably going to be a social media post that I put out here soon. But I was listening to a thing about AI, and it was talking about, in order for the AI to get better, it constantly needs to be fed examples. And like the guy was saying, in order for this robot to pick up an apple, we've had to show it hundreds of images and variations of what an apple looks like.
Right.
So therefore, if we randomize and we just grab an apple from the store or someplace, we put it on the table with a bunch of other things, that it knows which one's the apple and when to pick it up and when to move it when you ask for it.
Right.
And when I was sitting there, I was like, that's exactly what detection is.
100%.
My dog is like an AI. If I only show it one version of what this thing is, and we can just say cocaine for the description of this. If I always show them my cocaine training aid over and over and over and over again, it knows what my training aid is like. But yet when I'm asking it to go work in the operational environment, well, now the cocaine can be in a bunch of different ways. How it's packaged, what it's cut with, concealment, all of these other variations that I've probably done not such a great job in preparing my dog for all those variations. So just like AI, I can't expect the AI model to automatically know what to do when I show it one apple and then give it a very complex table full of a bunch of fruits and know which one is the apple, versus the version I give lots of variations of, like, here's an apple, here's another apple, here's a red one, here's a green one, here's a Granny Smith, all the different variations of it, so it can still generalize when a table's full of other fruit what to do. Well, my dog is the same way. The most or the wider the database is of the target, the better it is when the target is similar but slightly different, and can it generalize?
Yeah.
That's probably an easy way I would love people to look at it.
Yes.
Is like, I got to show that dog lots of examples of what the target could be, not just lots of examples of my drugs or my cocaine in a canvas pouch in a plastic bag with a pen or a Sharpie written with a weight on there and a little decal on it, all the way that a lot of dog handlers have it, and expect them to be really good on the street.
Yeah.
So,
if you get lucky enough and have the unusual clean environment to do a search warrant in, or to search, you're going to have good luck, and your dogs are trained, or hopefully you're still going to find dope. But I want to find the dope that is not going to be found, if that makes sense. I'm after that. I don't care if it's a gram. I don't care if it's 20 grams. I don't care. I just want to know that no matter what is thrown at my dog, with understanding that I have to be the handler. I have to understand that there might be times that I have to be able to recognize what my dog is doing, what my dog is telling me. Is my dog actually searching for drugs, or is that dog checking out the sweet smell of whatever on the couch? I think that's an area. I think some handlers are very, very good at it, but I think I see a weakness in a lot of the handlers that I train, in that they cannot recognize true odor response.
Yes.
They don't recognize it. So they think they do, and I do, I do evil things to my poor handlers, but I have been trying to probably put somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 dogs through this where I use lockers. It's a simple exercise where I just simply put competing. Every locker has, like, there's seven lockers will have just food in them. 7 lockers will have toys in them. 7 lockers will have dog urine on them. But somewhere within those 21 lockers, there might be a hide, a drug hide. To teach the handlers that, do you think your dog's really searching? And just because he stopped to smell the urine, is that odor response or is that urine response? And it's shocking to me how many handlers can't tell when their dog is actually smelling the urine versus when, oh, there's odor there. The other side of that is in these 200 some that I've done this exercise with, it's a very non-scientific thing, but I've noticed that there's about a 7-minute gap. And there's 7 minutes is kind of a consistent thing in law enforcement anyway, but I will watch these dogs where the handlers don't know that the odor is there, and you'll watch these dogs walk by it over and over. And it literally takes them 7 minutes of working through those smells before they finally go, oh, here it is, Dad. I'll sit now. So I always ask my handlers, take that back with you to that next search warrant, because you may think your dog is searching, but ask yourself, okay, is he searching? Can I recognize when he's actually on trained odor or when he's just smelling where a dog, peed or something? It was probably one of the hardest lessons for me. And I don't think I struggle with it so much anymore, but it is very difficult when you have to tell somebody, yes, that's an alert, or yes, my dog smells something. It's got to be right here. The confidence that comes with putting your dog in failable, if that's such a word, scenarios, you learn so much more. If I try to make my dog fail, and whether it's patrol or detection, but specifically with detection, and tracking as well. If you make it too simple, if you don't learn what your dog looks like in those different environments, you're going to miss stuff.
Yeah. I steal a phrase now quite often that I got from Steve White, and that is, we just kind of highlighted. A lot of handlers wait to call something after they get the trained final response.
Right.
And as Steve says, what we have to remember as handlers and trainers, the trained final response is just the period at the end of the sentence.
Yes.
We're not so good at reading the whole sentence because we keep waiting for the period, whatever the exclamation, whatever the end of sentence is, we keep waiting for that. But if we get better at reading our dog, when we see certain things happen, we can go, okay, this is the words I like to use is predictable, repeatable, reliable. These are the things that are happening consistently when my dog is working odor. And every dog is going to have its own version of what's predictable, repeatable, reliable. And what I try to get handlers to do is know what that is in odor. But to your point that you made about your training session is also know what these things are in relation to dog urine. What are they in relation to a toy? Because there will be little tells. And what we are failing to do is we're literally playing poker every time with our dogs, except we have horrible tells. Our dog knows what's happening when they're playing poker with us, and we have no idea what they're doing a lot of times unless they're extremely obvious about what they're doing. And in this conversation, like you had mentioned, you've had your other, you've gone to the floppy ear world. What have you had as far as takeaways go from going from the pointy ear dual purpose world to now single purpose floppy ear world? What has been some of your takeaways in that switch? One, in the specialty, knowing that your dog has now just one job to go do, but also what have you learned within the breed type changes that you've gone through?
Oh my goodness. The first thing that pops into my head is that I wish I knew when I worked my first two dogs, the amount of stuff that I have learned just working a detection dog. I have learned so much from these two dogs, not because I love to learn and I'm always watching videos, I'm always listening to podcasts. I think you have to keep learning no matter what. But I think I devoted I didn't give them near enough time, training time. I think we always want to do the sexy stuff, right? You always want to do let's go do a bite scenario. Let's go do a tracking scenario. And then you just, throw some cocaine in a desk and call it detection training. I know I never put either of my first dogs through the crazy, ridiculous stuff that I've put these two dogs through. I would have never, I just Sunday went out and threw some stuff in the creek to get a response, to see what, and it didn't have my odor on it. I placed it with, forceps and all that stuff. Just wanted to just see, because I had not experienced with that. Now I wish I would have done that with my other dogs.
Yeah.
For property, for evidence, for drugs. Never even thought to try that. Whereas now I'm just doing all this weird, goofy stuff just to see.
Because you have one discipline now, right? You're not dividing your attention among multiple disciplines under one dog. You're able to go, this is our job. This is all we got to do. How can I be creative about this one thing?
And you're not, I am not afraid to let them fail. I'm not afraid to do blanks. I do so much searching with no finds. I spend way more time doing that. And it's not that I know that it seems so boring. And there's a lot of cops that don't want to do it because it is really boring. And I didn't do enough of that with my first two dogs.
So much.
Yes. And I didn't do near enough of that with my first two dogs. And that would bleed over into patrol as well. That my dogs, unfortunately, my first dog got very, very smart about knowing this is not training. This is patrol, which means I'm not going to find anybody. Whose fault is that? It's kind of not the dog. I created that.
Yep.
And so I started to figure out, okay, why is he doing that? Why is he getting out of the car and basically saying, the heck with you, I'm not doing it.
I don't care.
And so how do I fix that? And so in my feeble brain, the only thing I could come up with was to make real look more like training. So what I would do is I'd pull up to the scene of a real call. I'm going to have to track a suspect. And I would get into the back end of my car and get a bite sleeve out and walk right by my car with this bite sleeve so my dog could see it, walk over and hand it to another officer and say, hey, just throw that in your car, would you? Then my dog would get out of the car thinking, hey, this is training. And so I had to mitigate some of those things, right or wrong. It might not have been the right way to answer those problems, but that question that kept coming up is, why does the dog do that? And so how do I fix that? So
you were doing what I like to call FAFO, walk around and find out.
Exactly. And the same
we got to try some stuff.
Yeah. And the same with drug searching. My first dog was completely dominant. He was very dog sensitive. He wanted to mark everything, very feral. And I had to learn, well, how do I make him search? If I'm going to go into a search warrant where there's a house full of dogs and they've locked them all in a bathroom, and now I have to try to get this dog to find drugs when all he wants to do is just mark his territory. So I had to recreate. I can't really make that happen in training very well unless I go to a dog kennel. So I started doing a lot of my training at a local pound, at a grooming facility or a vet clinic. And I would go in during working hours and just do drug searches. And it really did desensitize him to some of those things that were causing me problems on the street. So asking that question, why is this happening? Why did my dog do that? I just have to not find an easy answer and just say, no, he's a dumb dog or whatever is going to come out of your mouth. Yeah. There's always an answer.
What has been the biggest lessons you've learned from going from the pointy ear breeds to floppy ear breeds? Have you seen a difference between what they're capable of based on the breed characteristics?
You know, I think my second dog, my first dog was a hot mess. My second dog, I think, was very similar to my floppy-eared dogs. I don't really see a ton of difference, to be honest with you. I think if they've got it, they've got it. And if you're handling it right, if you're doing your job as a handler and trying to challenge and trying to push, I think it really came down to my last patrol dog was from Slovakia. He had all the DNA on his favor. And he didn't really care about anything but doing the search, finding the thing, you know. These dogs that I have now, I'm lucky enough that they are very similar to that. It's just, I just want to find the thing. Yeah. Whatever it is, I want to find it. I think it's easier because you don't have the concerns that you have with a bite dog, maybe. Yeah. Because I did find someone after it had been cleared by a tactical unit once that was hiding in a closet that they did not find. And my dog went in during a drug search looking for drugs and ended up biting and finding and biting a hidden suspect. Oops.
Wow. Yeah.
That was kind of a oh heck moment.
Oh yeah.
But I really think the similarity is in that I find myself handling the floppy-eared dogs the same way I handle the pointy-eared dogs, right or wrong. I tend to stick with what works. And what worked for my last patrol dog has worked very well for these dogs, with the exception of that I'm throwing way more fun stuff and challenging stuff and hard stuff at these dogs than I ever threw at my patrol dog.
Ford Canine membership. Many of you guys remember our 3 levels. We had bronze, silver, and gold. But July 1st of this year, we decided to make it one membership for everybody. And that was thanks to your feedback. In addition to your feedback, we've also added a Facebook group for Ford Canine members. In this Facebook group, we share lots of videos. You members can also post videos in there for myself or Natalie to review. We made this resource based on your input of wanting more interaction with us. With the Ford Canine membership, you also get discounts to everything on our website. So if you haven't joined Ford Canine membership, you definitely should. We've just posted videos of puppy cognition with my new dog, Neo. My lectures, what we've just done in Vancouver and other locations, are all posted there. So that way, even though you may not attend a seminar, you're going to hear my lectures every time I go out and teach. We also share videos of me working my dog, Ammo, and Natalie working her dogs, and other people working their dogs, all for the sole purpose of sharing information, answering questions, letting you guys ask questions, and give input as a collective group and community. To join, go to FordK9.com. Up top, click on membership, and we hope to see you in the group. Yeah, I think for me, what I see difference between floppy ears and pointy ears, and this is going to be even kind of more specifically within certain breed types in the floppy ear category, is traditionally when it comes to, let's say, the pointy ear breeds, and even the floppy ear breeds, but the pointy ear breeds kind of set the tone, which was we wanted a dog who played really vigorously with a toy, was really into the toy play, because we looked at that and said, that will bleed into my search work. And it does to certain extents. What I found unique and what I see more teams starting to, or more agencies starting to see, is some of these floppy ear breeds, though, they'll play like with a toy for a couple of seconds and they want to get right back to searching again. The searching is so reinforcing to them by itself that they don't even really care to play with the reward item, that maybe my shepherd loved the bite engagement and that tug and the fight. Like I said, and there's plenty of floppy ear dogs that do too, but there's also really a lot of good floppy ear dogs that sometimes get passed over because they don't see the harsh or that high motivation play type, because all those dogs want to go search.
Right.
And they write off that searching skill and go, well, he doesn't play hard enough for me, so therefore I don't. I'm like, wait a second, do you see that all this dog wants to do is go search? He's basically saying he's willing to work for nearly for free for you, but you don't want it because it doesn't play hard enough. It doesn't engage with reward hard enough. So that's like kind of like one of the things that I see that's different. But it's, again, because our industry is wired the way it is, a lot of vendors, when they are showing floppy ear dogs, are going to show floppy ear dogs that will play very similar to a pointy ear dog. But in my experience, when I've gone outside the box of the traditional ways and I've come across, and as you already know, I'm one of the, it's great. It's gaining a lot more popularity now, but by being a spaniel handler, that taught me that rule, that my spaniels, though they will play with me and they will play with a toy, they love their toy, damn, do they love searching. Searching is their jam. They can't wait to find the target and then go find another one.
Yes.
And with very minimal pay between, which really makes my life easy, but it goes against the grain of 30 years of being brought up with, they must play with you this way. They got to play vigorously. If they don't, they're probably not the strongest dog, and this, that, and the other. So there is some misnomers there, but knowing our industry and knowing that these days, unfortunately, a lot of handlers or agencies that are picking dogs are doing so with only a few dogs under their belt, or maybe only one dog under their belt. So their depth of knowledge of what to look at, it is easier to pick the one that does match pretty much what I would call like the bulletproof style of testing of, it plays vigorously, you can do this despite all the things that we might do as handlers, versus the one you look at and you go, wait a second, you're going to offer me a dog that's basically willing to work for free and jump all over it. So
both of my current dogs are pointing labs. Genetically, they were pointing labs, which is why I picked them. I'll be honest with you. So I never don't mess with Mother Nature. If their DNA says freeze, you could be blind and still figure out that they found the odor. But my lab, she's pure lab, 100% lab, that does drugs. My other, she's, I guess, a lab too, but she's half short hair pointer. So she's very much like that, where a lot of times when she alerts, I will just simply say yes. And she looks at me like, okay, I'm just going to go back to work. So even though I'm standing there with a reward or a ball, or even if I fling it at her, she'll often drop it to go back to work.
Yes.
Even though she is not the most intense searching dog, she will search a long time. Which I like that. She's, even my drug dog is kind of the Energizer bunny. She doesn't go fast, but she just keeps right on going. But I
slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah, right. And I think that is ahead and above and beyond and different than my shepherd, who would after a while be like, okay, I'm kind of over this now. I need a rest. These labs just never stop. They just keep going and going and going. And I don't waste my time with final response when it's my final response is the freeze, I guess.
And I love it, to be honest with you. I think and it was actually Dr. Brian Hare years ago came up to me and was like, so let me ask you something. Why do you pick a sit? Why did that happen? And I was just like, that's what the guys taught me, and this is what the industry did. And he goes, but at the predatory sequence, stalking is, especially in certain breeds that you guys are picking, is really, really strong. Why wouldn't you want to just capitalize on what they do naturally? They're far less likely to false that response or to falsely offer that when it's genetically wired to them, to when they find a stimulus that they've been told is valuable to them, to lock up and point at it, especially when you add then, like you said, selectively bred dogs, pointers, spaniels, other labs that have that really strong genetic, and then we go fight it and try to make them sit.
Right.
And so then they come into stimulus, which is the odor. They start stalking it because their brain's wired to in that predatory sequence to stalk it. And then we go, okay, that's not good enough. I need you to sit. So then they lose track or they lose focus to say on what they are doing genetically to then worry about what we want from them. And not that it can't be done because plenty of trainers have pulled it off. But I look at the vast majority when I zoom out, I see a lot more cost involved in that starts happening.
Yep.
And fallout from some of the stress and or confusion from the dog versus just doing what it does naturally and expanding upon that. Like, okay, now that you point, I want you to point for 1 minute before I reward you.
Exactly.
And really make that a super rock solid, indication that already happened naturally to them. So it's, and I think that's another thing that transitions in the day and age of the canine world is we had done it a certain way for a very long time.
Yes.
We had met with various levels of success with it. We felt comfortable with it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. But versus going with, well, there's also a even better, more reliable way, but it does require us to look at it in a different lens. That is a little bit harder. And then you got to take trainers who, in a lot of cases, they've been training 10 plus or more years, asking them to do things differently. And that to me is where the real issue is we struggle to make the change. Yeah. We like what we like. We're good at what we're doing. We pick dogs for the style of training that we do versus going, like you said earlier, let's challenge ourselves. Let's see what I can get out of this. And what can I learn from this? And why is it happening that way? And what can I capitalize from this? Or what can I learn from this to improve ourselves?
And go back to when you and I were first born into Canine and the way they did things. It was also a scratch, digging something out.
Yes.
That was okay. And then all of a sudden we added this sit stuff.
Yep.
And I always argued that. I always felt like, God, I know I don't want to scratch, but can you get away with that in court? Can you get away with a dog that doesn't sit? And I've just never had an issue with it legally or any other way as far as it's solid. And to me, it's just as easy to read as a sit. I have a list that I keep. I've defined my dog's TFR to the point that it includes all of these other things.
Yeah.
And I keep that in my training log. Now it changes occasionally. Sometimes I have little nuances that I add, but I love to define that TFR since it is just a freeze. But when they see that there's like 20 pieces to that, there's 20 little things that I consciously may look for. I don't have to have every single one of them, but I know that if I have a lot of those and the main ones, that's an alert. There's no doubt in my mind with that dog. And that's kind of, to me, what's the hardest part for especially new handlers is to understand that.
Because they want the obvious. They want that period at the end of the sentence that they can see it. And I think a lot forget that there is no Supreme Court case that says you must have this as your trained final response. Right. It's never said. It's never even suggested it must be this or it must be that. What happens, and I just had a conversation with an agency yesterday about this, where the defense attorney is picking apart the fact that the dog didn't sit. And we understand that me and the trainer were talking, is that though they do train the sit isn't the end all be all as far as the alert. It's just the end of it. And there may be numerous situations where the sit may not happen as easily. Right. But I said the most important and critical part that you guys as handlers and or trainers need to make sure that we are happening is what you just said a second ago, which is in my training and in my deployment records, I'm describing the entire process. From the first moment I noticed the first predictable thing that happened to then the whole sequence that ended in this way. And even if it doesn't end exactly, let's say in a freeze or a sit depending what's going on. But all these indicators happen. I know through my training and experience that this is predictable, that there is a odor of the trained substance present.
Exactly.
And when they get so focused on that, if you don't sit, they must have quit, that, you have to be better than that. You have to be able to articulate all of these things that are a part of that picture, not just the ending of it. And I think that's where, because there's in training, like you mentioned earlier, it's a timed event. You have this many weeks, get it done. And detection is usually way shorter than everything else. So they're trying to get through it as quick as they can. That there's so much that's been missed because we didn't invest in that whole picture. We invested heavily at the end, what it looks like,
Absolutely.
what a sit looks like, and what a freeze or stare looks like, and all of these things that look really great in photo and video, but don't happen the same way frequently in operational environments. So that's a big one.
I just think with a freeze too, I mean, not trying to sell that to everybody. Maybe I am.
I am too, so don't worry.
Yeah, there you go. But I have found that my body language is not as important to
Correct.
the dog then. So whereas if my dog stops to investigate something and he's a sit dog, and the mere act of me just turning, even if it's a subtle turn, did I just cause that sit? I think we do. We cause those things to happen even with subtle, small movements with a dog. And I don't see that quite as badly. I don't believe I affect my dog's freeze by moving and by moving her, pulling her away and trying to move her back end around so her head just freezes. All the weird things that you want to do to make her stand there for a minute and a half, freezing on something.
If we look at it from a logical standpoint, sit, for lack of a better term, was man-made. Freeze is natural within the dog.
Yep.
So anything that I build in or I create can be displayed by the dog to get reinforcement. Because if I created it to link it to reinforcement.
Right.
Versus something this is where Dr. Hare's point was, when something happens naturally, they can't help but do it once there's been an association to a stimulus. Exactly. It's typically going to happen more reliably when stimulus is there, despite the things that I might do. Because like you said, I didn't teach them the freeze. The freeze was rewarded after they offered it naturally.
Right.
And that creates a level of reliability that what we really want to strive for when we want that sit response. Yeah. So when we build something through a lot of reliable, and I'm not saying by any means we can't, there's thousands, and I had a few myself that they're good on that, on the sit behavior.
Right.
But a lot of the issues we deal with stem from that man-made type of behavior to happen.
Right.
Because it's linked to a lot of other things that links it to reinforcement. So then the dog starts trying to find what's the predictor to the reinforcer. Is it my sit? Is it the handler's placement? Where when I have a little bit cleaner, the dog created the response itself, and I'm just reinforcing it when it comes into this, it becomes really nicely. Now, I do share a lot with my classes that it can happen under a freeze if you make your training too operant. And what I mean by that is when we make training too simple, in the sense that there's only one item there, they go up to the one item, all they have to do is this. Well, then you can start seeing a really natural behavior start being offered through operant aspects, because the dog goes, got it.
Yeah.
What you really like is if I do this. So I'll do this, especially when I'm stressed out or I can't figure something, I'll just do this. But what's really unique when you really dive into it, and you do have a freeze alert dog, if you've ever inadvertently created them or caused them to freeze as a behavior, what you really see is when there's a freeze related to stimulus versus a freeze related to them just trying stuff, it's a very different freeze.
It is 100%. Yep.
Yeah.
And if you have that defined, I know with my drug dog, I discovered kind of by accident, by trying to force her to freeze on stuff, putting stuff out that I thought, yeah, she loves powdered sugar donuts. Don't ask me why.
Yeah.
But if I put out a powdered sugar donut, she will freeze on that initially when she was young. And I discovered by doing that there was a subtle difference. She had just a little bit of a change in her ears. It was actually a movement within her ears that was different for the trained odor, that I never see that when she is showing interest in some other foreign odor. And I got lucky with that because that was such a solid thing for me that I can see that from where I'm standing as a handler. But it helped me clean up all those other freezes. She never, I shouldn't say never, you should never use the word never.
Yeah.
I just about did.
Because they'll never ever like they've never before.
Yes, get the shirt.
Yes.
Yeah, so, but by doing those things with the sit, without a sit, without the down and all the other stuff that comes along with it, I think you get right to the root of what turns them into alerting, what they're trying to tell us, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. It's just so much more, it's not mechanical, it's natural, like you said. So, but the more you do it, the more you force your dog to make those decisions and make good decisions, the better you're going to be at reading those things on the street when it actually counts.
Now, because you work two different detection disciplines, firearm and narcotics, what have you learned by working two different styles of detection dogs? What are your takeaways from that world?
I still think it kind of follows the dog to some extent because the dogs are a lot different in their styles. But I'll be honest with you, I feel like just in the year and a half or so that I've been running this GSR dog, I feel like it's easier. And maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I know that I talk to explosive dog handlers that talk about the nightmare that is for them. And odor is different. The way you work the dog is different. Cadaver, I've trained with some really good cadaver people that talk about things like that. But I was pleasantly surprised when I got into this with her finding guns that it's way more forgiving, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Not just in training. Training is what it is, but when you're actually working a search warrant or actually out on the street working to find a gun or whatever you're looking for, I think you can make more mistakes as a handler. I hope I'm not, but I think you can. I think it seems like the odor is a little more just out there. It's not as easy to miss. I don't know if that's what I'm trying to say. It really feels like when I work her that I don't have to be right on top of her all the time. Yeah. I worry about the drug stuff because of fentanyl and things like that. I feel like I have to be a little closer and keep an eye on things a little more. Whereas with this gun dog, she's actually better off without me. She's better off if I just stand back and let her do her thing and not necessarily have to steer the boat so much with her. And I do a lot of old odors.
Yep.
Guns that have sat for a long time, ammo that is old, that has sat for, weeks or even months to see if I can get odor response. And it really hasn't made a ton of difference. I always worry about what is it that she's finding.
Yeah.
And I get really nervous over, I think I emailed you actually.
You did.
Live ammo is a good example of something where what is it that she's finding? Yeah. What is she paired to that she is successfully finding it? And
that hits a really good topic because like you said, so obviously you and I connected on that as well because of the research I got to do with Dr. Tiedemann on the gunshot residue in firearms for dogs. And in short, without making it a whole other episode just on that conversation, was we had learned two major things were associated to firearms. It was the gunshot residue and human scent.
Yeah.
And it was, the irony there was when testing dogs and dogs I got to test and work with, dogs that were trained firearms as an article actually outperformed dogs that had been trained as firearms through the bomb dog world way of doing it.
Right.
And what was crazy was when Dr. Tiedemann kind of confirmed through the machines that the things that machines are picking up was human scent and gunshot residue. It made perfect sense at that point.
Right.
Now, as we've had more years doing it and collecting more data, we do see that there are some slight variations in the GSR depending on manufacturers, but overall it's pretty close and it's easy for a lot of dogs to generalize. And like you said earlier too, it has a pretty strong level of odor to it. And despite time going by, it's a very sticky thing. I mean, it's one of the most important things when in evidence collection, when there's been a shooting, to bag the people's hands and things of that nature that have been involved, because GSR is very sticky and it goes everywhere. But what we used to do, as you know, was we'd focus on oils, solvents, the gun, the powders, all these things. And once we kind of discovered that the powders themselves had no real relevance to the firearm itself, despite bullets being there, was where a lot in our industry kind of get confused. Well, wait a second, the magazine's got this. And like Dr. Tiedemann started showing us, was I can take a 30 round magazine, test it, and it's going to have out maybe the equivalent of a grain or two of powder.
Right.
And no one's training to a grain or two. Everybody's training to a small sacks of powder, right?
Right.
So that was kind of one thing that kind of took away that thought that we had that powder worked. Now, the question was, just like you said when you reached out to me, was I'm training on GSR, but my dog does hit ammunition. And like in our conversation, we talked about was part of that was a dog generalizing to the cheat code of the search environment, which was this is the thing that doesn't belong, it's here, yes. And it has. Now, taking that further, when we researched it, was the dogs do take in some of the peripheral things about a firearm, but the more experience it gets, again, the more versions we keep showing it of a firearm, the better it goes. Okay, yeah, GSR, this is the thing I'm really paying attention to. But it doesn't mean that some dogs don't pick up on peripheral like lead and brass.
Right.
And especially if handlers are putting out loaded mags in with a firearm find or what have you. Mm-hmm. But like I tell everybody, I'm like, look, if you, depending on what your job is, what's the requirement of this firearms dog? Is it to look for GSR, basically shell casings and weapons? Go that route. But if you have also need to find ammunition, go put out ammunition.
Right.
And you'll find ammunition, no problem, because the dog will go, this is the picture. It's the projectile. It's the brass. It's could be with a magazine. And there'll be a lot of times, like I tell people too, a lot of times, even the ammunition is contaminated with GSR, short of going to the store, buying it right out of the box and not ever taking it to the range. Mm-hmm. But the average person carries their firearm and their ammunition in the same container, same bags, go shoot, and their ammo is sitting right there when they're shooting. And then now it's covered in GSR, which is why a lot of dogs will still hit ammo, even if it's never been exposed to it in a clean sense, because the GSR was there. And then the handler's like, well, see, it's hitting ammo. I'm like, it is, but can we hypothesize there's a lot of GSR on this one? Yep. Or did you go straight from the store and put ammo out and see how the dog did and then do it blindly? And usually this is where I tell people to test your theory, do a blind lineup and see, does your dog do it in this sense? And if it does, the more likely your dog did make the connection.
Yeah.
If it didn't, then maybe the connection that you thought was there may not be the way that it is that you believed, which means we have to dig into a little bit more, peel back the layers of that onion to say, okay, what is it paying attention to?
Absolutely.
Which is, like you said earlier, this is where detection requires a lot of work. It's not just throwing hides out. There's so much that has to go into the thinking of this.
Yeah.
And then it goes into this other part that I want to get into, which is the certification review of this. Now, you've been in the USPCA for a long time. My first question on that is, how did you get into the USPCA? And then I'll start with that. How did you get in the USPCA first? We'll go there, and then I'll take it from that point.
Well, St. Paul, when I trained at St. Paul, they trained under the standards for USPCA. So obviously when I came out of school, that was what I was familiar with. And back then with these dogs that came with no DNA, they're just out of a backyard. You spent the whole 12 weeks just training to pass a test.
Yep.
Virtually spent no time on actual street stuff because you didn't have time in 12 weeks.
Yeah. Yep.
So I was introduced through USPCA through that. And through the course of the first few years with my dog, I was kind of a shopper. I'm not going to lie. Mm-hmm. I have nothing bad to say about other canine associations. I think we're all on the same team. We all need we should all work together. Mm-hmm. Nobody's better. It's just different. But I did some shopping around and just blindly went to a couple certifications from different associations that I won't name, of course. But I walked in not knowing a thing, not having trained it, not knowing, and literally knowing nothing. Tell me what I'm supposed to do here. And I passed them with flying colors, basically. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. Yeah. But I came away from that thinking, could I have done that with the USPCA test? And maybe I could, maybe I couldn't. But I felt like I had worked much harder to obtain a USPCA test then I wouldn't have had to work quite as hard to get to some of these others. Again, that's not being, I don't want to be mean to any of them at all. I don't mean it that way. But I wanted to be challenged. I wanted the hardest test I could get because I felt like it's such a mediocre way to predict behavior, right? But if I could do the very best that I can and get one that's really hard, even though I'm not sure it is hard now. In my mind back then, I thought it was hard. So that's what got me into USPCA, and I stayed with them. I was just kind of in the right place at the right time in 2006. I was doing a lot of trialing. I was going to these national trials and stuff, detection trials with my first dog because he was pretty good. Mm-hmm. And got in the right place at the right time to be nominated to be the national secretary. Just knew the right people, I guess. And got the position as national secretary, which I hold still to this day, almost 20 years later.
Yeah, I was saying it's been a while.
It's been a while. And I love what I do for them. It's, as you can imagine, not highly paid or anything like that. No, but I don't do it for the money. No. I appreciate the ability as a national officer within an association to affect change. Some of it's not popular. Sometimes you have to move forward, and it's very uncomfortable for cops to do that, myself included. I throw myself right in there. And you've been there. You get used to something, and then all of a sudden, boom, wait a minute, I got to do what? I like having that. I wouldn't say it's all on me. It's not just me that makes these decisions, but I like being able to throw out these ideas. Let's do this. If we're going to have this association with 3,000 members, what can we do to serve them the best way we possibly can? And certification is one of the top needs, but let's also throw training in there. Let's be better at training. Let's move forward and try to, be at the top of the industry with certification and training. And so that's always appealed to me. So as the national secretary, it's my job to support the national association, to support the president. And our association does well, I think, when it comes to providing protections, if you want to call it that, for people that seek out a certification, that have to have a certification. And I don't care where you go, you got to have a certification, and not at the guy that sold you the dog. Don't go back to him for the only certification you get. So I'm real proud of that. I love what I do for them. That it has given me tremendous opportunity. I think I'm a better handler because of some of the opportunities I've had through the association. And I hope that I can stick around for maybe a little bit longer and continue to serve as the secretary.
Well, and you covered a lot there that I'll unpack a few things. So like you mentioned, many of the organizations have, I would say there's more similarities than there are differences.
Correct.
There's a lot of things that are very similar because, in my career, when I started off, I was in Florida. So I was USPCA from the get-go back in the 90s. That's what I knew. And this would give you a blast from the past. The city of Sanford was the area I grew up in. And I want to say it was 1992 or 93. The small little city of Sanford won the USPCA Nationals as a unit.
Oh, no.
And everybody was like, who are these guys? And all this kind of stuff. So USPCA was ingrained in my world for almost the whole beginning of my career. Mm-hmm. Then through the years, I ended up joining NAPWADA. Then I lived in Texas. I was in NDDA. Then coming out to California, I was part of CNCA, which is now IPCA, California Post Evaluator, Florida Evaluator, Florida, FDLE Evaluator. And the one thing, and you kind of mentioned it, is, and you see me post about this from time to time, and my question to you is, why do you think we know we should change? We know we should update things, right? Because the certifications themselves as a whole haven't really changed since inception too much. There's been a few things here and there. Is it based in the fear that we lose members is why we don't want change? Besides the fact, like you said earlier, cops don't like change anyway, so we already know that exists. Mm-hmm. Is it related to the fact that if we instituted, let's say, because USPCA did go out there and do the odor recognition test for the bomb world, like you guys were one of the first to implement that as a requirement.
Yep.
Why is it so difficult for us to do that in the drug world? Because if we did, we would really kind of start matching what the national written standards are starting to look like, the OSAC, the NIST, the ASB. Yep. Can you kind of explain from the position and being committed or being part of the national board, what is usually the slowdown or the hiccup for going, you know what, we should mirror or come close to this in our version of this to move that needle forward in certifications to make some changes? What do you think is our holdup usually for that?
It totally is the fear of change. And I don't want that to be membership based. Our association should not be based. I mean, we should not be doing things to keep members. That doesn't mean that it should be a good consequence of doing good things, right? So I've always been a big fan of you either lead or you follow. And if we actually do have an ORT right now for narcotics, it's not mandatory yet, but I'm getting there. But there's changes that have to be made. There's things that you have to fix. And the other problem is trainers that train to the USPCA are not bringing them into that thought process where why are you not getting a verbal out? Not that, again, that's something like you mentioned, it's not really in a court case anywhere, but everybody trains to that verbal out, right? So I would love to see, well, let's test people on a verbal out then if you want that, but let's also test them on their ability to physically remove a dog, their ability to use a breaker bar, because that's real world. Even e-collar is coming into play, I think, more. Making changes with things that are requirements within some of the state standards. For instance, say you have to have a recall. We don't have it until recently. We didn't have a mandatory recall. And that's an example of something that really people don't like. They don't love those kind of changes where we really put the foot down and say, how do you define this in court then? It's not okay to not have these certain things. Maybe I'm not specifically talking about recall or outs, but even in the drug world as well, it's not okay to continue to say as an association, yeah, that's good enough. We'll pass you.
I mean, you said that great. I mean, that's the hardest part I've had my personal struggle with is everything we do evolves, right? You and I have both we're in law enforcement. Remember, we used to walk around with the big batons. We had typewriters to do our reports. We had all these things. and all of it has evolved in some way or another. Even how we do firearms training, lethal force has changed dramatically, even in the past 10 years, dramatically.
Right. Yet
the dog evaluations and certifications have remained largely the same. And there are different associations or states that have implemented some changes, which I think have all been for the good. But I think, like you said, the national associations, this is where I would love if they kind of did it together at the same time, because basically if the big ones got together and said, you know what, kind of like we'll just use the ORT part for drugs. If we all do this together at the same time, there is no membership jumping. There'll be a lot less of it, because no matter which side of the fence you land on, still got to do the same thing. So you're not getting out of it because we both know this. We've been doing it long enough that unfortunately there are those few individuals that will certification shop. They're going to go to the place that they know will make it easy for them, and or whatever the easiest one is, and they'll pass it.
Yeah.
And that's all they're looking for.
Yeah.
What we really want as a national association is just like you said, we want the higher standards.
Yes.
We don't want to call it minimum standards. We want to call it the standard. Here is the standard that we have. This is what teams must do in order to pass it. And it's as best we can, encompassing evaluation of dog and handler and them together as a team.
Yeah.
And that is what our ultimate goal is. And to do so, like you said, by taking that first step and just doing it. But me personally, I would love it if we could get the sides together, the bigger associations, to kind of, because there is enough float between the two. I don't know the numbers, maybe you guys do, but I guarantee there's a X percentage, 10, 15%, whatever it is, that are members of both.
Right.
That's okay. I'm one handler, but because my region or where I live happens to have, USPCA is big, and so is NAPWADA. So I'm a member of both. And if we kind of collectively look at it, because I've been lucky enough that you guys have invited me out to speak as part of USPCA. Same with NAPWADA, they brought me out, and I have the exact same conversations on both sides. Right. And I can tell you, both national boards, for the most part, have the exact same feeling. They are in unison with the idea of, you're right, we do need to evolve, we do need to make some changes, we do need to make some updates that are going to be the betterment for the industry. But the part I haven't seen yet is the initiation to actually do it, with the exception, like you just said, that hearing it from you, that right now ORT, in its exact way I would have recommended doing it. Hey, it's voluntary at the moment. Right. You got a year or two to get on board and get used to it and prep for it. But by this date, it will be part of the cert. Yeah. And I think that's the easiest way. It breaks people in, it takes away the fear, and then off they go.
But if you look back, even when we did the ORT, which I believe was in 2008, 2009-ish, when we first came out and said, okay, we're doing it, and it's mandatory. You have to pass it first before you can do operational. And we had the mass exodus because, oh my God, I don't want to do that. It's too hard. It's too this. It's too that. I get it. But what's interesting about that was that we slowly people came back.
Yep, of course.
And suddenly discovered that it's not that hard.
No.
We forced them to train.
Yes.
Isn't that, you have to be careful about that. I totally understand that, because you have small departments and you have big departments. But if you can force, for lack of a better way to say it, you can force someone to train more, even if it's just for a certification, maybe that will inspire a little more greatness, a little bit more out of that handler. We're experiencing that right now, the pain of, we made a mandatory recall, for instance. It was like step one. And it was a tough one to swallow. I'm not going to lie. I wasn't a huge fan of the way it was written and the way we ended up implementing it. You failed.
Yeah.
It was just flat out a fail. Yeah. But what I'm starting to see, I'm a crazy stat woman, and I sit in the background and keep track of stuff.
Yeah.
And what I've discovered with that is that we are now forcing them to train that harder. So we changed some requirements, made it a little more doable. So we might have changed the distance and that kind of thing. But we're seeing that dogs that failed it at 18 yards, for instance, came back and passed it at 10, or came back and passed it at 18. Mm-hmm. And it provided us with, hey, we need to train this more so that people can pass it. But we're seeing that just like with the ORT, we forced these people, these handlers, in a nice way to realize they have to train that.
Yep.
And if that to me is success. That it's not about membership. If you lose them, you lose them.
Yep. And if we lose them, to be honest with you, I probably didn't want that member anyway if they weren't willing to do what it takes to do the right thing and become better.
Yes. And it's no different. How is that any different? Expecting that. How is that any different than expecting a bomb dog to not miss 5 hides?
Yes.
Or expecting a narc dog to find at least 3 of 4 hides. We're comfortable with that because that's what we've always known, right? Mm-hmm. So making these changes that fit for today, a year and a half from now are going to be comfortable.
Of course.
Even though they're uncomfortable now.
I was and the reason why I can relate to this, because I was one of those handlers. I was one of the ones right after, because most people kind of know the story now, I've shared it a couple of times, but I got my explosive training aids on 9/10. And the next day the world changed. And prior to that day, everybody laughed at me because I was like one of very few bomb dog handlers in Central Florida.
Right.
So when after some time had gone by, this is now probably December, obviously September. So by December, there were bomb dogs cropping up everywhere. Mm-hmm. And at that point, the government kind of handed off a lot of the bomb dog regulations to the ATF to kind of steer, because they were at that point, they were the only, besides the military, the only government agency that was doing bomb dogs. Mm-hmm. So I remember however many months later it was, we had our first encounter with the ATF people. They were setting up an ORT, and they had these really easygoing food labs that would do the paint can game all day long. So of course we come in there, they made us go through it. Our dogs fail it miserably, and I kind of like kick the dirt, like, screw these guys, this sucks. I'm not, that's the stupidest test ever. And the one guy looked at me and said, okay, Cameron, because I said, my dog will find real odor out in the environment, no problem. He goes, okay, so why can't it find it in a paint can? Right. How hard, Cameron, is it for your dog to sniff, in this case, 15 paint cans and tell you? How is that hard, Cameron? If you just said your dog can find it in a complex environment, he goes, or is your problem that you haven't exposed your dog to this, and this is why you failed? Correct. And it's really an easy test. It's a really easy evaluation. Just smell this thing and say yes or no is what you're looking for there. And when he broke it down to me that way, it humbled me because I had no argument left. Because if I could say I could do it the hard way and I had no problem and I thought the test was stupid, why couldn't I do this basic test? And that forever changed me. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, years going by when Swig Dog was created, and then these standards started becoming more understood. And I embraced that. You know what? That is actually a good starting point. Can your dog smell X amount of like things? They're all the same, but you don't know which one's hot. It's just a number or a letter. And if a dog indicates, you call it out. How hard is that? Yeah. And that's a good jumping off point, because now as an evaluator, now that I play the role as evaluator in life, if I can see that your dog knows the odor, now I can be a lot more creative in our search environments. Yeah. Like maybe there's odor there, maybe there's not in this venue. Maybe I put 2, maybe I put 1, whatever. Now, because at least I know the baselines there. Your dog knows the odors, I'm good with that. Mm-hmm. Now I'm really getting to look at, how do you guys operate as a team in an environment that you're actually expected to work in, and do you make good decisions? Mm-hmm. The second part of what I need to look at. Can the handler and the dog team work together and make good decisions at the end of the day? Mm-hmm. So I'm super glad to see that evolution is happening. And I also understand, and we all do, that some of these things it's a big entity. I've had these conversations with my friend over at Matt Devaney over at Border Patrol. And as he was introducing or implementing the marker-based system of training to his guys, he's like, hey, Cameron, look, I get it. I like it. I'm using it. And I use it right now in these search situations. but to try to convert the entire Border Patrol to a new way of rewarding, he goes, picture this as a huge cruise ship. I can't turn it on a dime. I have to slowly make this turn to get there. And that gave me the appreciation that, even though I've been members of all these organizations, and some are big, some are small, it's the understanding of human nature. We don't like change. But to the point that you made is we as an association sometimes have to kind of just say, you know what, guys, suck it up. We're going to do this. We're doing this for the betterment of the entire industry, not just you. And if you don't like it, you're free to leave. But the reason why we want you to do it is because we want you to be better, and we're going to be here to support you because you are following the standards that are written. Exactly. And if you don't, then maybe this organization wasn't for you. And in return, we as the organization don't want the individuals willing to do that because they're going to reflect poorly upon us probably in the future anyway and be part of litigation that we're trying to defend on behalf of a member who's not really following what the recommendations are. So it's like trying to solve the world's problems, but it's, well, whether it's, politics or politics as human beings within any kind of established system, change must happen. And sometimes it does require some painful arm twisting in order to get it there, to get over the hump. Yeah. But I am super happy to hear that it's going on. And which is why like you and Dawn and the other ones of part of the USPCA that I get to connect with regularly, have been super supportive in a lot of the stuff that I share to help the members, sometimes just using my voice. So it's not always the same voice as which I understand now too, as I'm older, by hearing it from somebody else we're not used to. Sometimes it connects, even though you guys could be saying the exact same thing as I'm saying, or whoever is saying, but when they hear it from another person, they go, I never really thought about it that way. And you're like, really? I've been saying this whole thing the whole time. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and I realize that certification it's not a super sexy thing to do. I know I've said that before, but we've been very fortunate as not just the USPCA, other associations. I hate to say it, but it's only a matter of time before that certification is going to get attacked.
Oh, for sure.
It is coming.
No doubt about it.
And my argument is always, why are we sitting back and waiting? Let's go to the fight. Let's try to defeat this stuff that they're going to try to defeat us on. And I hate the fact that sacrifices a handler somewhere because we're not prepared to help them. And I realize right now it's training that's being attacked, training and deployments. And not so much maybe the certification, but I still think we need to be prepared for it and ready for it.
It's coming because with OSAC publishing the standards, lawyers are going to go to that. It's what NHTSA was to DUIs, the National Safety Transportation Association, what they wrote as here are the guidelines for processing a DUI.
Right.
And they didn't care about some states doing the alphabet backwards from Q to whatever. Yeah. They said, here's what we recommend. This is logical. This is the continuity of this, no matter what, where you're at in the United States works.
Yeah.
And I know we are there now with the dog world and with the bomb dog standard already published. I know one of the HR standards is published. As soon as that drug dog standard's published and one defense expert goes to it or references it, now the floodgates open. And like you said, associations need to sometimes take the mentality as the best defense is a good offense. And we need to get out in front of this so that way we aren't playing catch up or our name isn't thrown into the bucket of, oh, well, they do 5 cars, 3 fines, 5 rooms, 2 fines. This is oversimplification of what a much more complex thing is happening, especially with people's Fourth Amendment search and seizure rights. I mean, and we're in the middle of a lot of that. Rights are a big conversation these days. So me and my little dream world of a canine association is it's a balancing act. You don't want to get too progressive and change too frequently. Right. But I think as a whole, every association is due for some updates because it's been the same way, honestly, since probably the mid 90s. We've seen no significant change.
Yeah,
or longer.
70s
Yes,
and
for
80s
sure.
even.
Exactly.
Absolutely. No, 100%.
So,
and I hope to see, again, I don't mean in any way to disrespect any other association. I totally support. We've worked with a couple of them on different projects. There's that California bill that was floating around there a couple years ago about patrol dogs.
Yep.
We have to work together. We have to have some similarities, and you can have your own way and do things a little bit differently, but ultimately our goal as an association has to be to provide the very best protection, I guess, if you want to call it that, for lack of a better way.
It is.
For every handler that's out there, whether it's drug work, whether it's patrol work, whether it's tracking, human scent detection, cadaver, you name it. If we can make them work a little bit harder to achieve a certification, maybe that will bleed over into their training and their street work.
Yeah. And I said this to a couple of associations. I said, the first one who does it, the rest are going to follow because they don't want to be the ones not doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I said, my hope would be that doing it in a unified manner, all of the major associations doing it together at or around the same time will make the change much faster.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if one does it, then it forces the other ones to go, either we stand our ground and we're not changing, which is going to make them really stand out legally later on. It puts them really on the defensive because if I'm a lawyer and I say, okay, your industry made up of canine experts, research experts, and legal experts said this is a written system that should be followed. I see, in this case, USPCA is following this. How come your organization isn't?
Right.
Can you give me a reason why? Because you guys do the same thing. This organization reflects United States Canine Handlers. This association also does. So why, Association X, are you not doing what this one is and they're following the recommendations by your own industry? So it puts an association really on a defensive pretty quickly if they're not instituting change.
We see that. We see that, and we hear that a lot of times with people that they don't like the way we do something, which is fine. A lot of people don't like the scoring. They don't like that we use points. And they think it.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely heard that one. Yeah.
Point thing, it causes competition.
Yeah.
You're not a competition. It's a certification.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, that's what our foundation, the USPCA, was founded on, was by a point system. And I think the boat that's being missed is that what I like about that is that I know exactly how much I failed by. So whereas a pass-fail, how do I ever know that I need to get better? So if I got 83%, 83 points out of 100, let's say, why can't next time I come back and get 95 out of 100? I know I have improved or I've done better. That's kind of the rough idea of why we keep the point system we do. But a lot of people will leave an association, which I'm okay. I get it. They will leave an association for something odd within, like, either maybe they fail a test and they're like, I'm out. Nope, not doing it. I've heard it's too hard. Your test is too hard. I've heard that it's not realistic. It's not realistic enough. Wouldn't argue about that to some extent. All the reasons that happen. But quite frankly, again, if you devise a test that is too hard, I know I wrote an advanced, for lack of a better idea, advanced narcotic test that I ran all of my guys through it. I've run my dog through it several times. Everybody's like, we're not doing that because it's blind. It's a blind test with literally nothing known. There might be 0 hides. There might be 5 hides. To me, that is as close to real life in a pristine environment as you can get, because it's just totally unknown.
And that's been one of the legal challenges was certain certification standards. I want to say, if I'm remembering it right in this case, because I can reference it, but Utah Post had the handlers knew the answer, in the sense of they knew how many hides were. And in this case, the judge in that state said, you know what, when the expert brought that to their attention, that's a problem, versus saying the answer could be 0 to whatever, that was better. And of course, it was not followed until that judge basically nullified the certification standard for the state until they made a correction. And within days, because I remember getting the email from Wendell saying that there's now a blue page in the certification that now says all evaluators will state the setup is 0 to whatever the number would be.
Right.
But if you look at it, like you said, logically, that's kind of how we should have always done it. In the sense of, because we have to create 0 as a possibility. And what I do like as an evaluator, my perfect certification would be ORT followed by me conducting an evaluation of the teams performing in the common areas they work. So whether it be vehicles, rooms, packages, etc. But at my discretion as the evaluator, one of those areas I can pick can be a 0. Right. But I have to pick one of them. I can't not do it. But that way, every area a handler comes up to me, 0 is a possibility. Right. And again, what's nice too is if my area is big enough. Now, this is a key part of that making it successful. Is if my search area is big enough, I may have some teams do some of the search area and find something, but have an area set off that has nothing in it, and one handler comes up and they get the 0 in that area, and that's how I can do all of it potentially being 0. And when I've done that for agencies under my own version of a certification, boy, do handlers not talk to each other. They will not give each other info. They shut their mouths because they realize they could screw each other over, not knowing who's getting 0 in this environment. Right. So it really creates a much more honest, integrity version of a certification. Accomplishes the goal of, yes, the dog's no odor. Yes, they can tell me they can walk out of there and say 0 is the answer and they were correct, as well as they can say, I had a find here. Or maybe multiple finds, depending on how it's set up. Right. And that gives us, again, a standard that's not considered a minimum, but more correctly matches operational environment pressures and decision-making. And we both know this. It's way harder for teams to come out and tell you there's 0 there than it is until you have a find. Because it is so hard to go, nope, I've got nothing. Right. Yep. It's like you could see it in everybody's faces. They're like, I didn't get anything, but over here, kind of maybe. And you're like, nope. Yep. So, but it is super cool to see that evolution is happening. Yeah. I'll end this on this question here. How do you see the future of, in this case, USPCA? What do you see like 5 years from now? What's the evolution within the association?
I hope that the association can continue, as all associations should continue, to look at what is happening right now with dog work on the street, what's being attacked, because there's a lot of stuff happening. And let's learn from that stuff and try to find a way as an association to, in 5 years, be defending that stuff. It shouldn't take us 5 years to learn that lesson. Yeah. But I sure hope that we can look at the things that are happening, the lawsuits that are coming out, some of the departments that are getting sued for certain things. Some of them are things we can help and things we can't help, right? But if there's something that a certification can provide, whether it's more realism, whether it's more blind stuff, whatever the case may be, more ORT stuff, I hope that we can continue as an association and that every canine association looks at things not as this is how we've always done it, but more as this is what we need to do in today's world to protect handlers from the lawsuits that are coming.
Yeah, for sure. And if I had to give my hope for USPCA and other associations, and it's what you said earlier, is to keep investing in the continuing education of handlers through, now that the digital means is so much easier, through video, through webinars, through printed material, etc., keep that momentum going, or finding ways to make it interactive so that way there's documentation or proof that the membership is educating those that are a part of this association to continue to be better, versus showing up for our annual event, partying our asses off, doing a thing along with their regular certifications that they do, but to invest in the human side of the equation even more so than we've done. We focus obviously heavily on dogs and, like you said, certs and things like that, but really taking that approach. And and the reason why I know this is happening for you guys, because Dawn reaches out to me, from time to time, and, I'm letting you know on this podcast too, I am more than happy to, do webinars, do Q&As for the association, write articles. I just, NAPWADA also had me start doing articles for them in their magazine, because a few, just like you guys, some members see it through the social media means and the podcast, things like that. But there's a number that just don't. They're isolated. They're not a podcast listener, or they're not heavy on stuff. But when the associations give them information, hey, go here and go look at this, is a super helpful thing in the investment of that human equation.
Yeah, we started what we're calling the best practices group, which Steve White's a part of, Don Slavic, Scott Sargent. There's, I can't even think of all the incredible, talented people that are on that. Mm-hmm. And we're doing free webinars. Now, that's not to build membership, because if we were trying to build membership, we'd charge for it, right? Or we'd make you join. It is not to build membership. What we're doing is trying to support Canine and better Canine in any way that we can. And we don't care if you're a member or not. Jump on those webinars. There's, supervisor ones, there's odor ones, they're doing one on drones right now, the use of drones with canines. That is what has to happen, because the only way you're going to learn, and especially those of us that come from smaller areas where we don't have the opportunities for training, we don't have the opportunities for some of the money that it costs to get some of these classes and trainings. What can we do to help those little guys as much as the big guys? And to me, that's what's important. It's not our name. It's providing training, providing education for anyone that's a canine handler.
I love it. With last thing, I just thought of it. Is there, for the civilian market, how has it changed at all for USPCA for if someone's part of, like, obviously the company I have now, that's part of what we do? Is there certifications available for those that have, or part of a professional organization, but they're civilian?
Yeah, well, our name is the United States Police Canine Association. Yep. So we've tried to maintain some degree of police attachment. So whether that's, cadaver dog handlers, for instance, who else are they searching for? Correct. They're not out there doing private stuff, technically. They're probably looking for somebody or something based on the needs of a police department. Yes. So we do offer some of these things for people that are affiliated. We're really getting into the therapy dog or comfort dog now. Yep. We're starting to see a lot more police departments are eating that stuff up. And that's a really needed thing right now. So we're starting to really get a good influx of therapy or comfort dog handlers whose work is primarily for law enforcement. So they work within the court system, the judicial system, or within police departments for casualty things, such stuff like that. We certainly try. I think the only hang up for us is not that we're opposed to them, but our name does signify police stuff. And so the private security companies that employ dogs, they're out there doing great stuff. Don't get me wrong. But right now, we're trying to maintain our effort, our focus, our energy into how do we better some of these others. And eventually, I would love to see us be more attentive to the private sector. I think I've learned so much from civilians. They were rapidly overtaking the law enforcement world. Yeah. And then you're starting to see these people that have never been cops that are coming in and doing amazing things with police dogs.
Yes.
Like Nesbitt and people like that.
Yes.
amazing stuff. And so you cannot rule civilians out at all, in my opinion.
And kind of like what you say, because I've sat on both sides of these fences here, is I look at it on the narcotic side, it's the more risky. I look at bomb work now closer to related to what you said with the HR dogs.
Yeah.
Because a lot of bomb dogs are usually working events where law enforcement is at, and law enforcement is the reaction force that's going to happen when a handler calls a find.
Yep.
And I think what will happen, or what makes it more acceptable versus the way it's been for a long time, is, oh, those civilians, I don't know if I can trust them. I don't know if I can do this. But I'm going to label it in the bomb dog world. If the bomb dog handlers met the same standards as the law enforcement standards, I think the general law enforcement, to include bomb squads and things like that, will be like, okay, I feel a little better about this. There's still going to be wing nuts, just like there is wing nuts in cops too. There is it. We aren't immune to it. We have our own, weirdos mixed in our group that we have to claim no matter what.
Right.
And the civilian world is going to be no different than that. But with what I see, many, like you said, there's so many great civilian handlers, trainers, companies that don't get the support that they probably should on the training side of the house, because they get ostracized as that side, when at the end of the day, in many cases, they have to work together. Or if something bad happens, we are working together. So I would rather us find the common roads together and bridge that versus keeping the divide there. But I also understand the needs of an association. And then, like you said, when the association is built for police, I want to make sure we're at least taking care of that priority first. And then we have enough bandwidth to take on these other parts that are relevant to what we do and can be intertwined to what we do. But let's first make sure our house is good to go before we add an addition to it. So I absolutely get that. So
yeah, absolutely. So.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be on here. It's super informative. Obviously, we went nearly 2 hours on this, even more than I expected, because this is great, because this is so many good conversations that I've wanted to have. I think we hit some really important topics that I hope a lot of listeners and viewers take from this. If someone wanted to, what's the easiest way to learn more about USPCA, learn more about you? What should people do in order to find this information?
I would love to talk to anybody. So contact me at secretary@uspcacanine.com. Shameless.
There you go, right there.
www.uspcacanine.com. But anybody that wants to talk about dogs, firearms, if you got ideas for testing, all those kind of things, hey, we are open to that. Like I said, we try to work with other canine associations as well, and bless them for doing their work just as much. So, contact me anytime if you have any questions.
And I'll add this, because I have a lot of women coming through training and a lot of women with different experiences in life. Some have had it hard, some have had it easier. I think these women getting to talk to you can be inspiring, because you've done it. You've been through it in what I would call in some of the harder days of the generations where it was less common to have women in there. But I think not only with everything you said, I think, if you're somebody and you're kind of struggling because you feel like it's tougher being a woman, reach out to you, because what already I know about you, you're going to be able to give really good advice, really sound advice about how to kind of navigate this industry.
Absolutely.
And I think that just that alone is gold. But like you said, I know you're and folks, Melinda is totally into the nerdy side of the dog world, but also the very practical side of the dog world. So you're bound to get some really good conversations, and some good questions probably pushed back to you too, to help you out as a handler and or as a trainer. So again, thank you so much for spending your time on here with us.
Thank you. And thank you for everything that you do for Canine. I think people take advantage of your training, and as they should. The free stuff that you put out, oh my gosh, you can learn so much from watching just some of your little short clips and things like that. The Canine world appreciates that, Cameron. It's just it's gracious of you to do that.
Thank you. No, it's like you said, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I love our industry.
Amen.
I love dogs most importantly, and anything that makes that life easier for them and for us is the whole driving force behind that. So
Thank you.
no, I thank you for the support as well quite a bit.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Canines Talking Sense, where it's okay to be nosy.